So hello everyone, we are Team Lift. My name is Paola.
My name is Ricardo.
I'm Daniela.
I'm Emily.
And we're going to be talking to you about the project that we've been working on for the last quarter and a half. So we just want to start off by giving a huge thank you to the teaching team, the Extreme donors, as well as our partner Burro, and Nick, our coach, that was super helpful, and Moses, Hamid, and Janine, that were always there to support us in Ghana and do a lot of the field work and Ghana work when we came back. So we want to start off by showing you the pictures of women that we met during our spring break trip to Ghana when we accepted the challenge of finding a way to generate more income for SheaNut collectors. In particular, we want to introduce you to Ophelia. Ophelia is a woman that lives in a remote village in northern Ghana, the village of Takvo, and she is a SheaNut collector. And so we asked Ophelia to share with us her story and what she does when she goes to collect SheaNuts and what that process is like. And she explained to us that the way her day usually goes is she wakes up very early in the morning before the sun has risen and goes to the mosque to do her prayers. She then takes her basin and begins to walk towards the farm. As she walks, she sings and she tries to be happy because she knows that that's what's going to be best for her. As she sees Shay off the side of the path, she'll go and collect it and pick it up one by one. She walks and collects and makes her way to the farm. And while she's collecting, sometimes she'll reach out for Shay and immediately jerk back because she'll see a snake and she'll get scared. But she knows she has to keep going because she knows that this is the way to provide income for her children. She arrives to the farm and is there all afternoon, all morning, and then comes back right before noon and carries the Shay in her head. At this point, the Shay weighs around 60 pounds, and she'll walk about 2.5 miles to make her way back to her home. Once she lifts the Shay, she has to keep going because lifting it is so heavy that she can't do it on her own. So she'll walk all the way without resting. Once she gets home, she'll put it down and rest against the wall because she literally cannot sustain her own body weight. She'll make food for her children and her day will go on and she'll go back to the farm. After she's done this for several days and has enough Shay in her house, she'll go and she'll boil all of the Shay. She'll scoop it out slowly and might occasionally burn herself because of the heat. She'll then lay it all out to dry and hope that despite it being the rainy season, it won't get rained on. She'll then crack it open one by one to get out the inner nut from the shell. After she's done that, she'll dry it once again and then she'll bag it and it's ready for sale. So out of all of this process, we thought to ourselves, what would we focus on? And there just seemed to be so much. But we decided to focus on the carrying process, which is when Ophelia carries the nuts from the farm all the way to her house. Why carrying, you may ask? Yeah, what about the snakes? Or what about the boiling? Or what about the cumbersome cracking, like one by one? But there's 4 main reasons why we decided to go with carrying. So firstly, we learned that 50% of the Shay is left behind, unpicked. And we heard this from a lot of women, but particularly from an end user called Rahinatu. Rahinatu explained to us that there is always Shay in the bush, and she leaves behind full piles of them that she just can't bring back. Secondly, we learned that demand for Shay is greater than supply year-round. This was told to us by several people in the market, particularly by Mary. She will essentially just trade goods in the market, and she told us that if she sees Shay, she will buy it immediately because she knows there's always someone that's willing to buy it. Thirdly, we learned that carrying is the most significant limiting factor. You can only process and sell as much Shay as you can bring home. So if you can't bring more Shay home because you just physically are incapable of doing so, you can't generate more income. It's just the main bottleneck. And so this was especially highlighted with Salamantu's quote when she told us that if she carried 2 basins, she cannot go back for a 3rd basin because she has to go on with her day, cook for her children, and so on. And fourthly, we learned that carrying is extremely exhausting and strenuous. And this was highlighted with multiple quotes from our end users that we talked to while we were in Ghana. Particularly, Abdullah told us that she has to lean against the wall when she gets home because she literally cannot stand. And a common saying that we heard when we were there is, "My head is sinking into my neck."
And so you might be thinking to yourself, I think I might have seen some ideas that might be able to help with this, right? And you are right. We do have bicycles, we have trolleys, we have carts, even wheelbarrows, or the famous hippo roller, which is out in Africa right now helping people move water. But the thing we have to keep in mind is that new problems need new solutions. And Ophelia, she needs something else. When we traveled to Ghana and we had our first in-person interview with Ophelia and others, we noticed she needed 4 things. 1, she needs to be able to go over hills, down valleys, across rivers, and across mud. 2nd, she needs to be able to carry heavy loads, 70 to 100 pounds of SheaNut as she carries on her bowl as she's walking down. 3, she's putting in the mileage. We need to be able to cover around 4 miles, and this solution needs to be able to withstand that. And most importantly, it needs to be cheap. So what was our ambition with this project? What was our goal that we wanted to do? We set out for ourselves to be able to make each trip, or be able to bring back 50% more shea. And we decided this number because of 2 main reasons. 1, we estimate that 50% is the tipping point where another step in the SheaNut process becomes the limiting factor. And we don't want to create another bottleneck. And then 2nd is because 50% will be able to give her the impact that she needs. 50% gives her $36. $36, 24%. What this means is she's able to send 3 children to school. But our solution is more than just an idea.
So now we know what Ophelia needs in order to be able to carry 50% more shea back to her home. And we also know the impact that we're trying to make. So we decided to jump into our testing. So before testing out different things to help her carry back the 50% more shea, we decided to test different forms of carrying. In our first round of testing, we were able to quickly eliminate any type of carrying solution that involves physically adding the weight onto your body. We then decided to test wheeled-based solutions. From this testing, we were able to decide to use 1-wheeled solutions instead of a 2-wheeled solution because this increased the maneuverability as well as decreased our costs. We then decided to iterate on the distribution between the location of the actual weight relative to the wheel, as well as iterating on the size of the base and the amount of shea that actually fits within the basin. So now that because of all these iterations and different prototypes that we were able to test, we were able to develop a product that meets Ophelia's needs. We were able to create Lift. So Lift is an extremely affordable carrying product that is meant to replace the traditional head carrying technique that women are using today to carry the shea. With Lift, women like Ophelia, who are carrying the shea every single day during the rainy season, are able to carry 50% more shea through these rough terrains, are able to carry the heavy loads for long distances, and are able to get home without feeling this extraneous pain on their body. So when designing Lift, we had to make sure that Ophelia was going to be able to use it and be able to want to use it. So we had to include these 6 critical functions into our design. We had to make sure that Lift was easy to push, low cost, multi-purpose, lightweight, function on difficult terrain, and also durable. So in order to make sure that Lift was easy to push, we decided to relocate where the weight was actually falling relative to the wheel to be directly on the wheel. By doing this, we were able to decrease the force required to lift up the weight by 85%. We then also decided to lower the actual weight relative to the wheel, and this increased the stability by lowering our center of gravity. Then, in order for Ophelia to be able to afford this product and actually use it to make an impact in her day-to-day lives, it has to be affordable. So the way that we went about making this affordable was by sticking to regular shapes. So we eliminated anything that was extremely customizable in order to decrease manufacturing costs. We made sure that all that you need in order to assemble lift was a couple screws and a wrench. There's no need to weld any pieces together, no need for high costs of actually assembling lift. And we also tried to incorporate plastic wherever metal was not necessary to decrease those costs. And women like Ophelia have very few belongings. So why would they invest in a product like Lift? So we had to make sure that Lift was also multi-purpose. We had to make sure that Lift can also help them carry different crops, different materials in their day-to-day lives that doesn't just involve Shea. So we also made sure that the actual container can fit different types of crops. And in order to make Lift as lightweight as possible, we got rid of as much metal as possible without losing the structural strength of the actual product. Our handles are made out of tubes instead of rods to minimize the material and the weight of the material. And we're also using as thin as a possible metal sheet at the bottom in order to keep the strength while also minimizing the weight. In order to be able to go through the difficult terrain when Ophelia is walking back and walking to the farm, we're using a tire that has deep treads so that it can go through the mud and doesn't get stuck. We also decided with the one-wheeled solution for this because it's easier to maneuver through those ditches and through those hills than the two-wheeled solutions. To make sure that Lift was durable and lasts more than just one season for these women that are using the Shea, that are collecting the Shea, we made sure to use a rubber wheel instead of an air-filled tire because this decreases, so then we completely eliminated the possibility of puncturing the tire. We also are using steel for the base and the handles, which are the places where the most pressure and weight is being put on for the actual product. And so once we knew that all of our critical needs were being met, we decided to take Lift to the farm and compare it to the traditional wheelbarrow. So as you can see, Lift came ahead in 3 out of 4 of our categories. So moving forward with our next prototyping iterations, one of the categories that Lift did not come ahead in was the comfort. And most of our users mentioned that the comfort was due to the location of the handle, so that is something that we're really gonna focus on right now. We're gonna focus on the different angles of the handles, and also, not all women are the same height, so we also wanna focus on making the handles adjustable to different heights so that women can make sure this product is the best that it can be for themselves. With the frame, we're gonna test, right now we used a mill to cut out the slot where the wheel is being centered in. And we're gonna make sure that we're gonna test different forms of actually manufacturing that base so that we don't need a mill and find easier ways of actually putting it together to get rid of any need of heavy machinery. And with the wheel, right now the wheel is one of the biggest things driving our costs. So we wanna look into different types of wheels, continue iterating on that to see what can help us drive our costs down. So now I just want you guys to take a second and think back about Ophelia's day. Imagine now Ophelia's day using Lift. She can carry home 50% more Shea every single day back to her home, and is not burdened by the extreme pain of her body without having to carry on her head.
So let's talk business. And so we're thinking 6 things to keep in mind to make sure that Lyft can enter the market and stay in it. First is Lyft ultimately is an income-enhancing opportunity. With this, they're going to be able to make $36 more. Second is we're making sure that Lyft can be able to get and see this return in their season that they buy it. Be able to use the product right when they buy it. Third, we're talking about a mass market here. SheaNut producers across Africa work with 16 million women who collect these nuts and who potentially could use this product. And this product we're trying to scale to go past even that. Fourth, we're making sure that an individual can purchase this item and that it is within the scale that they have for that asset. Fifth, we're making sure that we have local representatives and that we have that network for distribution and for sales. And lastly, we're making sure we're having a financing scheme so that these women who want to buy and purchase it could be able to pay back in installments when they see that return coming back.
Thank you. Okay, so thinking about longer term and scaling this innovation, we see two potential barriers to scale. The first, adoption. As we talked about, carrying on the head is incredibly ingrained in tradition. And when we were in Ghana, we saw girls as young as 5 carrying bowls on their heads. What is going to make our end user adopt this new technology? Second is willingness to pay. Our end user has very few possessions, and her limited income is spent on meeting her family's most basic needs. What will make women like Ophelia willing to pay for Lyft? We've done some early research thinking about these barriers and how we might solve them. Let's start with adoption. For adoption, we went to our end user and did some testing with a simple wheelbarrow to understand whether she has any appetite for a wheel-based solution or whether that's something she would reject purely based on gender norms and ingrained traditions. The results of this were quite surprising. Our end user saw the benefits of a wheel-based solution. In fact, Maya Nafa told us that this would help her get rid of the pains on her neck and her body and allow her to rest. We also found that our end user did not expect there to be gender issues, which we had thought there might be with this solution. In fact, she said, I regard as a wheelbarrow as something women can use, but the problem is I cannot access it and I cannot afford it. So to be clear with that testing, we don't think a wheelbarrow is the answer. We know that it doesn't go the distances that they need to travel, and it doesn't carry the 90 pounds of weight that they need to, but it was amazing and exciting for us to see that this is something that they would be willing to consider using. Going forward, adoption will be a big part of our work. We plan to continue testing with our end user. We plan to educate our local distributors on how to communicate the benefits of a wheel-based solution. And we plan to target early adopters who we believe to be women in the 25 to 35-year-old range. Now let's think about willingness to pay. So our current solution, in its current state, we estimate costs $28, taking into account the cost of materials and labor. When we spoke to our users, they said they had willingness to pay of $5 to $12 without a financing scheme, but $20 to $24 with a financing scheme. So we realize there's a gap between these two numbers, but we believe that it's a gap that we can close with further work. And we believe that Lyft is something we can make affordable for Ophelia. There's 3 main ways that we plan to work on willingness to pay going forward. Firstly, we'll iterate the design to simplify it further. We'll work with manufacturers to really understand the cost drivers and reduce them. And we'll identify partners for our financing scheme. So we've talked a lot about all of our ideas going forward, but how will we actually execute these? Over summer, we'll continue with the post-class scheme called Social E, and there's 4 main ambitions that we have for this. Firstly, we want to continue to prototype and test Lyft. Secondly, we want to find manufacturers and work with them to further take out cost. Thirdly, we want to develop relationships with potential partners in Ghana. And finally, 2 of the team will travel to Ghana to test out Lyft with our end users and meet potential partners in person. Looking longer term, we think there's 2 main options for Lyft. First is that we launch a startup We own the product development, the product design, and the manufacturing relationships, and we work with many different partners across Western Africa for sales and distribution. The second option is a full handover to a partner where they take over the full product design and development, and we reduce our involvement over time. We plan to decide which of these two options to take over the summer program. But for now, we wanted to give you a bit of insight into what that plan might look like with each option. So if we launch a startup, this is a summary of our 18-month implementation plan. We would spend next year finalizing the prototype, working with manufacturers to do small-scale manufacturing, and then do a pilot with 10 communities in Ghana to test our product. We would then plan to launch an official startup in a year from now at the end of the school year. In option 2, where we fully hand over, we would spend the beginning of next year finalizing our prototype, selecting our final partner, and fully handing over all of the product work that we've done, and then we would gradually reduce our involvement throughout the year. We've also done some work to think about potential partners for both of these options, but this is something we'll explore further over the summer. So we've just given you a lot of information about our plans and our ideas, but we wanted to end with our vision. With Lyft, we see a world where Ophelia and all of these other incredibly inspirational women who collect shea for their main source of income in West Africa can carry home more shea every day, allowing them to earn more income so they no longer have to worry about their children going to sleep hungry. Thank you so much for listening. We're happy to take questions.
Yeah.
That's the kind of applause you get when you bring your own rental crowd. Questions? Oh.
Can you tell us a little bit more about what went into the testing that you showed us?
Yeah. So we went through actually a lot of. Are you talking about the testing for Lyft or the testing to come to Lyft?
So you showed us a graph of your
Yes. This compared
Lyft versus
a wheelbarrow.
And I was kind of curious.
Yeah.
What were you basing that
Yeah,
on?
definitely.
What was the situation?
Go ahead.
So we took it to the Stanford Farm, which is the place on Stanford campus that we found was the most similar to the terrain that matched what Emily and Pao saw in Ghana. And there we were lucky and we found a couple people that were at the farm at that time. So we created a route and we added 60 pounds. 60 pounds of weight to the wheelbarrow and to Lyft. And we had all of our testers go around our route, and then we asked them to scale. We had like 4 set questions, and we asked them to give us a scale of 1 through 10 for ranking both of our products. So they tried each of them in the same route.
Perry?
Have you guys looked at government investment as a means of purchasing Lyft? It's like community investment.
You mean like having the government finance it for the people? Yeah. No.
Not something we've explored that much yet. Yeah, I think that could be an option to go down. I think we like the idea of being able to break even at least at a variable cost basis so that we can make this a sustainable innovation going forward. But we probably will need some funding early on to get us kind of off the ground. So government could be a really good place to look. Thanks for the idea.
The cost number that you have there for the product,
Yeah.
that was all costs in. That was cost of goods and manufacturing labor. That's not, if you're going to do a startup,
Yeah.
that's not what you sell it for to an end user.
I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Because you need a margin there.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And so I'm wondering, that just makes the gap bigger.
Yes,
Right.
absolutely.
What they'd
Yeah.
be willing to pay. And so I keep hearing the refrain over and over again in my mind when you said, you've got to come up with financing options. And I'm just wondering if you've looked at other base of the pyramid solutions that have had to rely on financing options and you've done any learning about some of the challenges of becoming a creditor to small the rural poor. Because that does have its own set of challenges, as we know from lots of other experiences.
Yeah.
Not saying you need to answer that, just maybe putting
The
that
thing
out
to
there
think.
for you as a
Yeah.
thing to
No, absolutely. And I think that $28 number, I don't think we would be willing to go into market with it at that cost. We need to get it a lot lower, which is the plan for the summer. The other thing I would say is there are a lot of informal financing groups. So every community we went to had village savings and loans groups. So we may explore some more informal options if that formal sector proves difficult.
You might want to talk to some different folks who've
Yeah.
done that before and just make yourselves
Definitely.
Yeah.
the challenges.
It's a great idea. Thanks.
Sigalit?
Have you explored other use cases that might be useful for the family? And
Yeah.
maybe other members of the family when it's not used for them?
So Shea is actually, it's crazy to think of the fact that it's about a 7-week long season, but it's like what they derive the most income from throughout the whole year. But we know that they do farm a ton of things they grow a lot of other things in the farm. So we see Shea Lift as an option for them to also bring back all those goods, which is why we didn't make it only specific to like small SheaNuts. And hopefully it can work not only in Ghana, but also in other developing economies.
Have you thought about it for carrying water?
Yeah.
Yes, we have. And I think that's something we'll think about more over summer. Making it watertight, I think, would be a great step because that's clearly an important use
Or
case.
just built to accommodate the size of the
Of
containers?
basins, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I have a question about kind of manufacturing.
Yes.
Maybe I'm reading too much into your prototype, but you're reusing other items there. So 2 questions. One is the idea that you would try and manufacture as near to your end users as possible, or is this something that comes from some other central location? And then the second one is there a concept that, because you talk about standardization and not using any raw materials or trying to keep standard, are you thinking of trying to make sure that you're reusing or trying to reuse things that are already available?
Yeah, so the kind of idea that we had behind this was the fact that these plastics this one itself costs around like $5. This is retail price. So I'm assuming the manufacturing cost of it is actually quite low. And the design of the box itself isn't supposed to be weight or force enacted horizontally. It's mostly supposed to be stacked. But even then, it already works very well. And we wanted to kind of test that idea if we could use plastics instead of the metal. And we thought this would be a good base lineup, like a normal like plastic box that you would buy at Home Depot to be able to have that first standard measurement for.
And then just to add on to that, the geometry of the shape right now that we created for the box, we think that it can also be easily injection molded. And by like having that high initial cost of the mold, but then like having an extremely low cost of manufacturing could be something to think about. And another potential solution that we're also thinking about is creating the sides with using the jute bags or materials that are accessible, that they already have in Ghana.
Also looking into if like the geometry of the actual base and how if you fold the edges of it, you can use a thinner metal and still have that same like sturdiness of the material, which was a thankful tip from Marlo. A great tip.
I know in some of your sketches you had sort of more traditional like, legs on it.
Yeah.
And then I noticed that you have them. Is that something that you're considering adding back on so that
Yeah.
it is flat, sort of like usually?
Yeah, definitely. We just thought that was kind of just like the icing at the top of the cake. That we wanted to just test like the critical functions first, but that's definitely something to keep in mind for the experience of using it.
But not completely flat, because if they're too long and you have too bumpy a ground, then you'll kind of hit into them. So there's a sweet spot there, I think.
So one thing that really came out today in the way that you talked about the user experience was just the experience of like physical pain and the relentlessness of that. So
Yeah.
I'm actually appreciating some of the qualities that you've chosen to focus on in a different way. So I find that an interesting direction. It definitely still, clearly there's work to be done to make sure that the economic value proposition is such that people will prioritize the purchase, essentially. I have some technical questions and then a real push around your testing regimen. So as you go into this next phase of can. And I also had questions about both uphill and downhill experiences, and like, is there a need for a break? Is there some way to alleviate like pushing it up a hill? What happens to you physically? Is that possible? So if you have insight about that now, great. If not, I would just say like add that to the list.
Cool. Sounds good. Definitely will do. Yeah.
We did test on hills, like up and down hills, and I don't know how like if the possibility of including some sort of brake, but we do think that we can, by like adjusting the handles or like iterating on the handle design, that we can make the experience of going up and down hills much better than what we tested right now.
And I guess something that's also different about Lyft's design is that to get it up and going, you push down versus of others in which you have to carry the weight up, because that's the feedback that we got from our users. So we see that as being potentially a lot better for the users.
And then what is the very next step in the process? Like how are the nuts then transferred into that next step? Because I'm wondering if there's a way to create some kind of feature that like also helps with the
Make it
entry
easier
step.
to, yeah. That's a good thing to think about.
So like putting them in and then taking them out, essentially.
I was thinking more of like whatever the next step in the processing probably involves transferring it from that container into some other
Boarding.
Yeah. So they put it in piles right now.
Yeah.
With our current design right now, we're envisioning,
Like you just turn it, it just goes like that.
and then it's easier to pour on the ground.
Yeah, because you need to gather enough of them to then put them in the boiling pot. And what they do right now is just keep a pile of them.
I'm going to call it a day. Thank you very much for bringing us
Thank
home
you.
in style.